In this tutorial, I'll show you how to use Spoke to create your own Mozilla Hubs room. And to begin, you can go to hubs.mozilla.com/spoke, and you'll need to log in. So once you've logged in, you'll be able to get started. And I've created these projects already, but we can go ahead and create a new project. And you can use a pre-built example that has been built by the Hubs team or other users. And there are many, many, many examples, many, many environments that you can build from. Looks like here's Cape Canaveral. Anyway, so you can sort of remix a pre-built environment. You can start from scratch. If you do select a pre-built environment like I have for an example here, you can basically run with what has been built such that without even making any modifications here, you can immediately publish. And so what happens here is when you publish your environment to Hubs, you're now first saving this and any changes that you made, that I've made no changes. I'll call this mine. So we're saving this to our Hubs project folder right now. And now we're exporting it. So exported, save and publish. All right, so now we're exporting this scene. This is a performance analysis. So basically it's saying how much power in terms of your hardware, like your mobile device or your computer, is needed to run this. So it's a reasonable, it's a reasonably, it's not too bad. You shouldn't have any issues on most devices running this environment, loading it up and experiencing it. So now we're uploading the scene, and even though it's already been built once before by the Mozilla Hubs team, we are now publishing it as though we created it. And we can now view it and actually create a room with a unique URL. So this means that this Hubs room now exists as our own. And from here we can, once it's done loading, we can enter into the room and begin to add objects to it. So there it is. We can change the name to small town, and that'll change in the URL in a moment. We can add a description. Hi. Room size, we'll leave it 24. We'll go ahead and hit apply. Small town. Small town. Name has changed, been updated. We can enter the room. Audio check. Microphone works. Speakers work, or rather headphones. Now we are in the environment that we've created, and so we can begin to drop whatever assets you want. But let's say you wanted a more customized room, or that you had a different terrain model, a different environment that you wanted to build from. So what we can do is, I'll close this and I'll go back to Spoke. So instead of building off of one of these examples, let's say you wanted a more custom approach. You can go ahead and create a new empty project. Despite the name, it will contain a very basic terrain. In this case, it's this crater. And inside here, what we have is the crater. And like in Unity, you can make it visible or disable it. You've got your basic transform features, so you can, move it around, scale it up, etc. We've got our spawn point. This is where your avatar will spawn. This is where every user that enters the environment, this is the location where they will enter into the environment. And you also have your basic directional light, your skybox. And so what we can do, and I'll get to the floor plan. Well, actually here, the floor plan is the walkable surface of this 3D object. So you have to have a floor plan in order to be able to walk and to move your avatar over the terrain. So to see the floor plan, we can hit regenerate, and it's now generating this purple hue, which represents the walkable space of this terrain. And these areas in the mountains, the steep areas over here, they're not purple because, as we can see in the properties down on the right here, the slope, these are steeper than 60 degrees. So the maximum slope allowed for walking is not this steep. So we can change that if we want to, but that's what's happening there. So let's customize this a bit. Scroll up on the right here in properties and disable. So no longer the terrain creator is no longer visible. Actually, I'll just delete it. I'll hit the delete key. And let's say I want to have a different, well, obviously I want to have a different 3D environment. Let's use, let's see. So I can search for a model, but I'm just going to see what I can find. I wonder, let's try using this this jiggly watermelon. Let's see. Okay, it's over there in our hierarchy now. Interesting. So some of the materials of our jiggly watermelon did not appear. So, and hence, yeah, this object. Okay, so watermelon didn't work great. Let's try something else. Station B. Okay. I'll drag to our hierarchy. It's quite small. So scaling issues are common, where if this is going to be our environment, if this is going to be our terrain for avatars to walk on, like this avatar here, the scales need to be adjusted. So I'll go ahead and increase the scale. That looks pretty good. Now for my avatar, I'll grab these arrows and I'll move the avatar to an opening. And do you want this, there's a blue pyramid at the bottom of the avatar, and you want that pyramid to just be, you want it to be above the surface of the terrain. So we'll go ahead and lift that up. That's where it is fine. Or just to be safe, I'll increase gradually the Y value. All right. Now the floor plan. So we can still see the floor plan left over from the crater. So if we go down here in the properties and hit regenerate for the floor plan, now it's created it for this little shack terrain. But there's a problem, and the problem is, or wait, let's see. No, I guess that did work. Okay, never mind. There is no problem. We have our environment. So at this point, we can, if you want, you can bring in more 3D assets, more 3D objects. So like, for example, well, we can bring in this little truck. Whoops. It's off the... I see, you gotta click to drop it. Okay. So the truck is kind of big. We'll leave it like it is though, just why not? Now this truck you could have brought in once you're an avatar in the space, so that's not loaded. You don't have to bring in objects now if you don't want to. In fact, it's probably a lot easier to build in objects once you're inside of the environment as an avatar. But if you'd like, you can pre-build, you can pre-place objects, you can pre-place images, so you can preload an image so that once you go into the environment for the first time, the image will already be there. There are other elements that you can experiment with, different lights. You can add another spawn point. So now we have a second location where users might spawn. So it'll be one of these locations, not just this one. You can add a collider, different colliders. You can add trigger volumes so that when your when your avatar walks over the trigger volume, kind of like an automatic doorway, when you walk over the rubber sort of doormat of the automatic doorway, the door opens. Well, with the trigger volume, it works similarly. When your avatar moves over a target object, then something happens. But let's go ahead and at this point build out this scene. Now, what happens, just like before, we're ready to publish. But first, what we're going to do is decide what is a good thumbnail image. So when I hit publish to hubs, it shows what my camera here is seeing. That's how you set your thumbnail. And the thumbnail, I'll go ahead and reload that. So these thumbnails are worth pointing out because I'll go ahead and publish this now. So we'll call this truck stop. Truck stop is the name of the project. And this is, remember this here, this is my thumbnail that I've set my camera on. I'm saving the project to my hubs folder. Truck stop is the name of the scene. We're going to go ahead and publish that. All right, so while this is exporting, performance check, looks good. Low means it's not going to be a hard scene to load across different devices. I'll publish it. Now, that thumbnail will be used inside of the Carson Center environment here. So as we can see, I'll jump over here. These are thumbnails that represent scenes, just like the thumbnail that I just created for my truck stop scene. So that thumbnail will be used in the Carson Center environment as the holder for the visit room button. So that's how that thumbnail gets used. View scene, create a room, and now I've got my truck stop scene, and it's got its unique URL, which I can then change. Truck stop. So if it's confusing, there's sort of two layers in the hierarchy. You have the room. You have a room, which I'm calling truck stop, or actually let's do this. Let's call this truck stop room. Or not even that. Let's call this example room. Okay, example room. So I've just changed it again, URL changed. So example room is basically a container that can hold any scene. It just so happens that the scene I'm using, go to my scenes, is truck stop. So again, I can pull up any other scene into my container room that I'm calling example room. So hopefully that layering isn't too confusing, but that's what's happening is I now have this room and I can share this link with anybody and they can open this up, but I can also change, enter room, okay. I can also change the scene. So let's say I want to use this Rolling Hills scene. Maybe. Okay. That should change. Choose a scene, Rolling Hills. There we go. So now I've got the same URL, example room, but now my scene is different. So now what this means is you can have a URL, and if you want to change the scene, the URL will stay the same, and you can swap out scenes, and you can also update, make changes to a specific scene. So for example, my scenes, truck stop. Hey, choose a scene. Choose a scene. Let's try this again. There we go. Truck stop. Change the scene to truck stop. And what you could do is, if you didn't want to, I'll add this. So you can generate your objects, your 3D objects, your videos, whatever object inside of the hub space. If you wanted to, you could go back and you can go to Spoke and you can edit the room that you've already built. You can edit the scene. So I can go to edit, and now it's reloading. It's reloading that scene inside of Spoke. And so I can add, if I wanted to add another asset in here, such as this rock. So if I want to add the rock, I'll drop it. It's huge. It's great. Okay. Rock. Now, again, I'll publish to hubs. I'll use the same name. Basically, I'm just overwriting what I already created. So it's saving the project. Still going to call it truck stop. Save and publish. So now we're exporting the scene. Performance check is fine. Now we're publishing it again with the same name. Okay, so now I've basically updated the truck stop scene with this giant rock from Spoke. I can say okay, and I can go back here, and I'm going to now change to my updated scene, my scenes, truck stop. And now I'm still got the same example room, URL. And there it is. Truck stop of the rock.